You are listening to the Fantasy IPA Podcast.
Can't wait. It's time to go eat, baby.
Your audio hangout for the latest intel, projections, and analytics.
Hey, we are playing to win. I'm in a league of my own. Ain't ready for me.
Visit us at fantasyipa.com and follow us on Twitter at fantasy_IPA.
Let's do this.
And then there were three. Following last night's episode of the Fantasy Face-Off, we saw Jake Seeley take down our good friend Mo Brewington in a very hotly contested battle. But Jake Seeley has moved on, and we have two competitors today fighting for the right to face him in the finals. I'm going to introduce those competitors here in a moment, but first I want to say hi to my ever-present co-host, Jamie Black. How you doing, Jamie?
Doing great. Last night was an awesome showdown. I'm expecting the same tonight from our very special guest. As always, you guys can follow me at FIPA_black like the color, and I'll kick it back to you, Art.
Thank you, Jamie. Remember to follow me at fantasy_IPA and go to the site at www.fantasyipa.com. Let's bring in our first competitor today. Off the strength of a first-round win over our friend Doug Bowles from Utter Fantasy, we have Eric Ollinger from DLF. How things going, Eric? You want to say hi to the audience? Tell them if you've got anything going on.
But yeah, senior writer for Dynasty League Football. You know, just getting geared up for the season. Just updated my rankings, expanded that by 25 at each position. So if you're looking for IDP rankings, we have all those available over at Dynasty League Football. Check them out. Hit me up on Twitter.
You can follow Eric at Ollinger IDP. That's at Ollinger IDP. Okay, and our next competitor we have is from DFF, or Dynasty Football Factory. Off the strength of a victory over our very own John Bray last week, we bring in Jeremy Funk. How are things going, Jeremy?
Good, man. I'm behind enemy lines. Boston's not treating me well with this cold scare. But you know what? I'm living large. It's great to be here. I'm excited to have the Eric Ollinger as my competitor here. I'm excited. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, definitely going to be fun, if nothing else. So today we will be following the same format as in our quarterfinal rounds, where there will be 2 rounds of alternate listing questions. Within those 2 rounds, I'll give you a category. You'll have to name the player that fits into that category. Each player will get 2 strikes. If at any time one of the players gets their second strike, the player without their second strike gets the chance to complete the list and build up a bigger lead than normal. Within those first 2 rounds, we will stop down when you hear the bell.
Yo, sound the bell. School is in, sucker.
And that's going to be our school breaks, where we're going to get the analyst takes on some of today's fantasy situations. That will bring us to our 3rd round, which will be the lightning round. Once again, we will be posing 7 questions. The analysts have 30 seconds to answer those questions in rapid-fire succession. And at the end, the player with the most points will once again move on to the finals of our first Fantasy Face-Off bracket. All right, we're going to kick off round 1, and by random draw, we're going to start with you tonight, Eric. The question here is, in 2015, there were 10 running backs that received over 17 carries in goal-to-go situations.
Let's go. I know he had 11 touchdowns, so I'll roll with Jeremy Hill.
Yes, Jeremy Hill. He had 19 carries, and he did convert 9 of those into touchdowns. Jeremy Hill is a correct answer with 19 goal-to-go carries. All right, so Eric jumps out to a quick early lead. Jeremy, who is your first guess?
I'm going to go with the one and only Adrian Peterson.
Yes, Adrian Peterson. He is almost at the top of this list with 22 goal-to-go attempts. He had 22 attempts. He converted 4 of those into touchdowns, so not as high a conversion rate as I would have expected, but Adrian Peterson did get the chances with 22. Good answer, Jeremy. Let's move on to our next guest for Eric. Eric, who do you have?
Doug Martin.
Yes, Doug Martin, also toward the top of this list with 19 attempts. Now, he converted 5 of those goal-to-go attempts into touchdowns. He also had a couple targets in the goal-to-go situations in the passing game, but failed to convert either of those into touchdowns. But he is a correct answer. So, Eric, that gives you 2 points. So far, we've got Adrian Peterson Doug Martin, and Jeremy Hill. Who's your next guest, Jeremy?
I'm going to go ahead and take Mark Ingram. Really?
Yeah,
I don't believe that.
Yeah, Mark Ingram barely missed this. And by the way, I think I don't remember how many games he missed, but had he played the full season, he was almost certain to make this list. But he did have 15 red zone carries. Despite having less than some of those guys, he converted almost as many touchdowns with 5. So Mark Ingram, although he had quite a few opportunities, he did not make this list, just missing the cutoff at 15. So, Jeremy, that gives you your first strike. One more, and Eric will be given the opportunity to complete this list, so please tread carefully. Eric, who is your next guess?
Devontae Freeman.
Yes, and Devonta Freeman leads this list. Devonta Freeman actually had 23 goal-to-go carry opportunities, converting 9 of those into touchdowns. Now, unlike most of the others, he also had 3 targets in goal-to-go situations. He got 2 passes and converted one of them into a touchdown. So, Devonta Freeman, a lot of people are down on him, but I think if those red zone and goal-to-go opportunities, if they stay steady, he could actually be a value this year. But very good answer there, Eric. And that brings us back to you, Jeremy. Jeremy, you've got 1 strike. Can you avoid your second one? Who is your next guess?
I'm going to go with Matt Forte.
Yes, very good one.
Sitting on 1 strike is the worst feeling in the world. It's terrible.
Yeah, I feel the pressure on my side, and I don't even have the strike. But yeah, Jeremy,
I try to watch you to see if there's any sort of yes or no. There's nothing. You're a stonewall. It sucks.
I'm stone-faced. I'm giving it to these guys. But yeah, no, Matt Forte, very good. He actually had 18 attempts, so he did surpass the 17 mark, and he converted 4 of those into touchdown. And it has been chronicled, Matt Forte's poor conversion rate as it pertains to goal to go and short yardage. But in this case, he converted pretty close to in line with a lot of the people on this list, but there's also a lot of people that had much higher rates, like Jeremy Hill, Devonta Freeman, the aforementioned. But yes, Jeremy, that is a correct answer. And by the way, Matt Forte did also catch a touchdown on 5 goal-to-go targets. That leaves us with 5 more correct answers. Correctly identified Devonta Freeman, Adrian Peterson, Doug Martin, Jeremy Hill, and Matt Forte. That brings us back to you, Eric. Who is your next guess?
Whoa. Chris Ivory.
Very good, very good.
Yes. That one for me was a little bit more obscure, but Chris Ivory does come in on this list at 19. And he had a conversion of 6 touchdowns with those 19 carries. Good answer. You are still strikeless. That brings us back to you, Jeremy. Who's your guess?
I'm going to go ahead and say Todd Gurley.
Oh. Yeah, and Jeremy, you took another player that probably would have made this list had he played the entire season, but Todd Gurley, like Mark Ingram, barely missed this with only 15 goal-to-go opportunities. Now, he ended up converting 6 of those for touchdowns, but unfortunately, Todd Gurley does not make this list, and that eliminates you from this round, from this first round, and that opens up the door for Eric here, who is yet to log a strike. Eric, we've got 4 more players on this list. Can you name one of them?
D'Angelo Williams.
Yes, and D'Angelo Williams brings up our first school break where we're going to stop down and ask for analyst takes here. Now, Le'Veon Bell with a pending suspension of 4 games, that news comes out this week, and there's, obviously we have to shuffle and adjust. Now, Le'Veon, before this news, was not making it out of the first round. I could probably see him sliding into the early second now, but the question for you guys is, and I'm going to break these up into Dynasty versus Redraft if you guys don't mind, but we'll start with you, Eric. And from a Dynasty lens, how far does Le'Veon have to fall before you start considering him?
Well, in a Dynasty outlook, he's probably not going to fall too much. There's a lot of stigma around him now that he's just a habitual knucklehead, kind of in the Josh Gordon school. I mean, it sucks. This is the second year in a row we've dealt with substance abuse issues, and in this case, it's just supposedly a missed test because he changed his cell phone number, if you can believe that. I mean, the thing is, man, like when he's on the field, like there's very few people that even come close to what he can give you on a week-to-week basis. So, talent's going to win out. So you're going to roll the dice on the guy. It just sucks that now that you're one hiccup, you're one crazy weekend away from a 10 game or a 16 game ban or longer. At this stage, you just wish he would grow up and, get his head right. But, he's still not going to make it out of he may drop to the end of the first round, but, if he makes it to the top of the second round, owners are going to pounce. So, it's, like I said, you're willing to risk it for the talent.
All right, Jeremy, how about in redraft? Are you dropping Le'Veon beyond the first round, or where are you targeting him?
That's a good question. I think in a vacuum this season, I don't expect all that much from him until maybe about week 6. I mean, the knee's still kind of a concern. I would go on a limb and say that I would drop him out because I think there are more intriguing backs in the first round. Yeah, I mean, and like Eric said, for some reason, these things kind of follow the same players, and you at some point have to say, okay, this isn't a coincidence anymore. So I don't have much of a leniency in that in my mind anymore after took some time to look into that drug abuse policy, and you have to test positive like 3 or 4 times before you even are suspended or put into into the system. So to me, that shows that Le'Veon's he's not mature enough. And it honestly probably has some sort of substance abuse problem. So I'm just going to stay away at this point.
Yeah, I think with this news coming out, I think the biggest outcome is going to be D'Angelo now rising up in those draft boards. So if you're able to land Le'Veon early and handcuff him with D'Angelo, who, by the way, I didn't go over it, but D'Angelo last year in limited play had 22 red zone attempts with a very good conversion rate. He actually had 8 touchdowns in goal-to-go carries. So as we all know, D'Angelo was a game winner and a season winner for some last year, and he could play a similar role at certain points during this season. All right, Eric, that leaves us with 3 correct answers. Can you grab one of them?
Man, it's getting thin now. What about Thomas Rawls in Seattle?
No. Unfortunately, Thomas Rawls did not make this list. Jamie, can you look up where Thomas Rawls was?
Yes, I can. I think that was another situation, just not enough playing time. But he only had 7 attempts. I think a lot of his plays he had some pretty big plays, but he only had 7 goal attempts.
So, bad news, Eric, that's your first strike. Good news is that's your first strike, so you still have a chance to clean out this list. 3 more backs.
There's one guy I wrote on this list at the beginning, and I don't think it's going to be right, but I'm going to take a shot with Danny Woodhead.
No, and that's going to give you your second strike and wrap up this round. But I see Danny Woodhead here. He had 10 goal-to-go attempts.
Well, I just know that Melvin Gordon had 0. So
yeah.
I guess 0 touchdowns. So it's Woodhead had those games where he had the multiple touchdowns. So I thought maybe they were trying to pound him in.
Yeah, he had, so he did convert 10 of those carries, 3 of those carries into touchdowns, but he also converted 3 goal-to-go passing targets into touchdowns. So 6 goal-to-go targets. I can see where Danny Woodhead looks like a pretty tempting guess at this point. But yeah, that's going to wrap up the round. We've got a couple players on here.
Stewart, he's one that generally didn't get those chances, but he had 18 last year. And then Crowell. And then there's another one, guys, running back that not a lot of people.
Yeah, the 3. So Jamie mentioned
Murray.
Jonathan Stewart. Yes, that's
there
right.
You go. There you go.
Jamie mentioned Jonathan Stewart and Isaiah Crowell, and then Latavius Murray. All right, so this end of the round school break is going to be pretty straightforward, guys. Simply, who will lead the league in rushing touchdowns in 2016 if you had to guess right now? Jeremy, let's start with you. Who do you think is going to be the rushing touchdown leader in 2016?
I'm going to go ahead and say Mark Ingram. If healthy, I think he's on one of the best offenses. I want to say Le'Veon, but who knows what's going to happen there. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say Mark Ingram.
Yeah, I like that in a high-powered offense. And, the only perceived threat for me was like a Kerry Robinson over there that had that goal line type of mentality. But now with CJ Spiller and, a rookie in Daniel Lasco, I do see Mark Ingram getting the bulk of those goal line carries. And in that offense, can't blame me for naming him Jeremy. Good one. How about you, Eric? Who's your guess for who's going to lead the NFL in rushing touchdowns in 2016?
I'm going to have to go with Adrian Peterson it's kind of a cop-out. It's kind of the easy way to go. But, that offense is still going to run through him exclusively. And, with Treadwell and Diggs, that's just going to open some things up. And, it's kind of the de facto answer, but, it's kind of who I think is going to, but honestly, I think Zeke could make a run at it. I think Ezekiel Elliott, barring a suspension of his own, I think he could surprise people and really push AP for it.
And Adrian Peterson single year of his career has had double-digit rushing touchdowns, so that's not a bad guess at all. I agree with that, actually.
Yeah, and here's a fun fact, guys. There was one person that barely missed this at 16 goal-to-go carries, and his name is Cam Newton. And he actually converted 9 of those. So, he was up there as far as leaders in rushing touchdowns. But that's going to do it for round 1. And Jamie, what is the count as we close up this round?
We got Eric 5 and Jeremy 2.
Yes, Eric 5 and Jeremy 2. Jeremy, you need to make up some ground in the second round here, my friend. We're going to start with you with this question, and this one is going to deal with receiving touchdowns. 2015, 9 players had 11 or more receiving touchdowns. All you have to do is name them.
Well, I'll go first inclination, Antonio Brown. Are you? Come on. Seriously, I don't believe that.
Yeah,
I don't believe you.
That is definitely a tough one. Antonio Brown barely missed this with 10 receiving touchdowns. And, a lot of his points came on those huge yardage and reception weeks. But, no, Antonio Brown, unfortunately, barely misses this list with only 10 receiving touchdowns. All right, that kicks it back over to you, Eric. I think that you may have been blessed with one of the answers that a lot of people might have missed. But, Eric, who is your first guess?
Allen Robinson.
Allen Robinson came in with 14 touchdowns. As you know, he tied for the league lead, but Allen Robinson is a correct answer. Eric, that puts you on the board in round 2. Jeremy, who is your next guess?
I'm going to go ahead and say Doug Baldwin.
All right, and that correct answer does bring us to one of our school breaks. And yes, Doug Baldwin did qualify for this. He was one of the players that did get 14 receiving touchdowns on the strength of a very, very good final stretch. The school break question today, guys. Doug Baldwin finished 11 in PPR, yet he's going at 409. Now, I looked him up in Fantasy Football Calculator. He's going right after Jeremy Maclin at 405 and right before Dante Moncrief. So 3 players that have a pretty good range as far as where people are valuing them. So I'm going to start with you, Jeremy, and the question here is, can you rank those 3? We're talking about Jeremy Maclin, Dante Moncrief, Doug Baldwin, and why you've ranked them that way.
Maclin, Baldwin, Moncrief. Okay. Honestly, probably that exact order I just said. Maclin, Baldwin, Moncrief. Solely because I'm going to take the number 1 receiver on an offense without a number 2 receiver or a number 1 tight end that's really proven himself. He's going to be a target hog, so I'm going to go Jeremy Maclin at 1. And that whole narrative about Alex Smith not being able to throw touchdowns, that's just stupid. Can we just throw that out and just forget about it? He had really crappy wide receivers that one year that he didn't throw a touchdown. So all right. Anyway, rant over. Then I'm going to say Baldwin. I think that's an ascending offense. He just got big money. So, I would assume that, they have big plans for him. He kind of reminds me of that same Golden Tate player that we don't really know why through scouting or through analytics why he's as good as he is, but he's just good at football. So let's just get over it. And him and Russell Wilson's have got something good going. So I'm gonna throw Baldwin next. And I don't believe that tear was by accident. He did it for like 5 weeks straight. So that's not a small sample size. Moncrief, like, you can see me right now. I'm wearing Colts sweatshirt and a Colts hat. Like, that sucks. You know what? Like, Donte Moncrief, like, everybody's hyping him and hyping him and hyping him. As much as I want to say that's probably because he's a good player, it's also because some of the bigger names in Dynasty Fantasy Football are saying, "Oh, Donte Moncrief's about to blow up." Let's hold our horses there for a second. Like, Indy hasn't really come out and spoken anything about Moncrief this offseason. Like, he's had turf toe injury this already, which we know medically lingers. I've had turf toe. It's terrible. You just can't push off. And look, Philip Dorsett's now 200 pounds. And they're all they can talk about in Indy right now is Philip Dorsett. And I just don't think that it's hype anymore. I think if I'm going to buy into somebody, I'm going to be selling Moncrief and buying Dorsett.
All right, great take there, Jeremy. And like you said, must be real because he is wearing that Colts hat. But Eric, how do you rank these three players, Maclin, Baldwin, and Moncrief?
Just for this year, then I agree with what Jeremy said with Maclin. I would take him first. You know, Alex, you know, as a 49ers fan, you know, I lived through the Alex Smith years, and, you know, he took a bad rap and, you know, gets labeled the game manager. But, you know, he seems to really fit Andy Reid's offense, and him and Maclin clicked last year. So I would definitely take him. Then between Moncrief and Baldwin, I think they're even enough to where I would rather roll the dice with the upside. And I think that Moncrief has a higher ceiling than Baldwin, because I think that last year, I think it raised a false floor. So I think that people are going to assume that he's not going to drop below a certain level, even though I think that he will maintain that, you know, wide receiver 3 production floor. I think Moncrief has the ability to really shoot up as a high wide receiver 2, you know, and squeak into the low end wide receiver 1s in certain weeks. Cause, you know, with the Colts defense not being the greatest, sorry, Jeremy, like, there's going to be weeks where they're going to put it on Andrew's shoulders and, you know, kind of the Jacksonville effect where, you know, at the end of the game, they're just slinging the rock and, you know, garbage time wins fantasy matchups. So, I'd rather roll the upside with Moncrief, but they're close. Flip a coin, you know.
Indianapolis is 100% garbage time. So they might as well just change their name to the Indianapolis Garbage Time Points. So
I think what it would come down to is if I ended up with T.Y. Hilton early, I would take Baldwin. And if I miss out on T.Y. Hilton early, then I'm going to grab Moncrief because I'm going to want a piece of the Colts offense.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
Really good stuff, guys. And yeah, I've been loving Maclin right at that 3-4 turn in a lot of my drafts. And he did finish as the number 14 receiver in PPR last year. Second year in that offense with Alex Smith, I think Maclin is actually a value where he's being taken. But let's move on. Jeremy, that gives you a correct answer. Let's move over to Eric with your second guess.
Tyler Eifert.
Yeah, very good. Tyler Eifert, who came in with 13 receiving touchdowns last year. So that, at this point, gives us Tyler Eifert, Allen Robinson, Doug Baldwin correctly identified, and Antonio Brown, who barely missed. That still leaves us with 6 correct answers. Jeremy, who's your next guess?
Okay, I'm going to go with DeAndre Hopkins.
Yes. Jeremy, DeAndre Hopkins shows up on this list, and he had 11 receiving touchdowns. All right. That ties us up at 2-2 in this round. Eric, who is your third guess?
I'm going to go back to Jacksonville and take a stab with Allen Hurns.
Oh.
So close.
Really?
Yes. Allen Hurns is one of the players that missed us by 1 touchdown. He, too, had 10 receiving touchdowns and did not make it to this list. And Jeremy, it goes back over to you. Who's your next guess?
I think Eric kind of gave me the idea with tight ends. I wasn't even on my radar.
Should have saved him then.
Yeah, you should have saved it. I'm going to go Gronk.
Yes. And Rob Gronkowski, who in 2015 hauled in 11 receiving touchdowns. Does this make this list? It gives you a 1-point lead in this round, Jeremy, with 2 strikes a strike for each analyst. We are neck and neck. Eric, can you avoid that second strike?
Probably not.
We need a recap real quick.
Yeah, let's go ahead and run them down, Jamie.
Okay, so far, correct answers. Doug Baldwin, Tyler Eifert, Gronk, DeAndre Hopkins, and Allen Robinson. We got 4 more.
Let's try Odell Beckham.
That is
yes.
correct.
Odell Beckham with 13 touchdowns definitely makes this list. And as you could hear, this is another one of our analyst school breaks. So Odell is a transcendent talent and probably shouldn't fall out of the top 5 in any draft format. But so we're going to talk about the other side with Sterling Shepard, the polished rookie coming in, the most quote-unquote NFL ready. And we're going to talk rookie class, and we're going to talk where you have him ranked within this rookie class. So really this question pertains to redraft or dynasty. But Eric, since you named Odell Beckham, we'll let you start with this one. Where do you have Shepard ranked in this rookie class?
I have him ranked 3rd amongst the wide receivers, behind Treadwell and Corey Coleman. I like the Ben McAdoo offense and, Eli Manning and the lack of the run game, basically, because I don't believe that they have a capable running back on that roster. The targets are going to be there, and I like what he brings. It's kind of odd that, they've been trying to nurse Victor Cruz back from his, terrible injury. And Shepard does kind of a lot of the things that Victor Cruz did. But I fear that the expectations are pretty high for him. As I'm saying that, like, you can basically say the same thing for Treadwell and Coleman too. And arguably Shepard has probably the best quarterback of the 3 there. And this rookie class for Dynasty, it's Zeke and then kind of feels like everybody else. So, if I had 3 Dynasty drafts, I could see myself taking all 3 of them first, just depending on the day. His downfalls, I just don't see where he makes the impact in the red zone. And I could be wrong on that. Like, I think that Treadwell offers that red zone capability. With Odell there making all the crazy circus catches, like, I feel that that's going to be Eli's go-to. So I guess the 2A or 2B to Corey Coleman.
Interesting. Yeah. And part of the reason why I threw this in there is I was wondering aloud or internally whether Josh Gordon news this past week might have bumped him ahead of Coleman in some of people's rankings, but it sounds like you have them kind of neck and neck. And just to round it up, it sounds like, Eric, you've got Zeke number 1, as most do, then Laquan, and then Corey Coleman and Shepard at 3A and 3B. Let's move over to you, Jeremy. Where do you have Sterling Shepard with respect to this year's rookie class?
Did you ask this question because you knew something? Like, was this baited? I feel like you're baiting me into, like, just going off right now.
I would never do that.
I think you are. I think you know something that your listeners don't. I am most polar opposite on the Sterling Shepard train. Like, I don't have him in my top 8. I actually have him at 11. Solely because, like, he's not an athlete. People say, he wins with nuance. Like, he was a senior playing against freshmen. Like, come on. I pulled this stat up really quick for you. So he didn't eclipse 1,000 yards until his senior year. He had 51 catches his junior year. Like, the reason why Sterling Shepard doesn't come out is because he's not good enough to be drafted. Like, he's not. So he goes from undraftable to second round in some stud. That doesn't happen. It biologically to me just doesn't fit. And to him going into Odell Beckham Jr.'s offense, like, there's just no way he's ever going to have enough of the pie to be viable. I can see him maybe once being a wide receiver 3, but hell, who isn't a wide receiver 3? Like, I'm going for wide receiver 1s, and that's 3 people: Doxson, Coleman, and Treadwell. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. They have potential to be that. And I don't think there's ever a case when Eli can support 2 wide receiver 1s again, let alone stop throwing to Odell Beckham Jr. Like, I don't even want to see him stop throwing to Odell Beckham Jr. Like, the dude's unbelievable, and I just don't see enough of the pie, let alone if Victor Cruz comes back. Like, who knows? I don't project. I just look at more past, and I just don't see anything that makes me go, wow, Sterling Shepard's the guy. Like, give me that. I'll pass. I'll pass every time at 105. I'll pass every time at 106.
Thank you for that take, Jeremy. And part of the reason why we did pull up Sterling Shepard, we haven't really talked about him in the face-off. And, I've seen him go anywhere from 5 to slipping to the second round. So, all right, that leaves us with 3 correct answers on the board. Jeremy, can you name one of them?
And I have 1 strike already, correct?
That's correct. Both of our analysts at this point have 1 strike in this round.
I lost 1 year, or like in the playoffs once to this guy, and I honestly think he had his best year. And if I'm gonna go out, I want to go out with this guy. So I'm gonna say Brandon Marshall.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and, Jeremy, you're sweating it, but Brandon Marshall was up there with Doug Baldwin and Allen Robinson with 14 touchdowns on one of his most productive years. But Brandon Marshall definitely made this list with 14. All right, that shifts the pressure back over to you, Eric. Eric, can you stay in this round and name one of the 2 remaining players?
Oh man, I feel like one of them is obvious, and I feel like one of them is like so obscure that we're just not going to know it. I've jotted down a list of players here, and I definitely have more than 2 I'm looking at, but and the 11 is so touchy, like it's right there on the threshold. I'm glad you took Marshall because I was looking at Marshall and Decker both, like because I knew Fitz threw enough for one of them to get it. Let's go with AJ Green.
I swear to God, AJ Green has been he's been answered in every single question set. Raw.
Yeah, we mentioned this last night where Jake incorrectly guessed AJ Green, but AJ Green has been the most missed answer in this Fantasy Face-Off series. But AJ Green was a near miss here, Eric, so he came in just under at 10 receiving touchdowns, yes.
Yeah.
That does leave the door open for Jeremy to close that gap that was created in the first round. Jeremy, there's 2 more players on this list. Can you name them?
I'm going to go with another guy who had a career year and throw out my love for Kirk Cousins again and try and say Jordan Reed.
Yeah, correctly identified Jordan Reed, who did barely make this list with 11 touchdowns. And, interestingly, he did it in 14 games. And, we mentioned the fact that on a per-game basis, he actually outscored Gronk last year. So, Jordan Reed, that leaves you with 1 more correct answer. Can you pull it in?
I'm going to say Sammy Watkins.
No. Unfortunately. And Sammy, he came on strong late, but he did miss this list. He did have 9 receiving touchdowns. So, you could probably say he was pretty close, but Sammy did not make this list.
Was this last one a tight end?
No, actually, Jeremy, you've named this guy. So
Eric, you were on it.
Yeah.
Dude,
yeah,
is
Eric,
it Decker?
I'm sorry.
Don't tell me
it was
it's freaking Decker. Oh my god.
It was Eric Decker. Son of a bitch.
Yep.
Because
Yes.
I legitimately, after you said that, I was like, Fitz threw like 40 touchdowns last year. And who's he going to throw that to?
Right.
That was my logic with A-Rob and Hearns, and I didn't want to get like burnt on the same damn logic twice.
So the one you missed, guys, is Eric Decker. And funny, Eric, you actually mentioned him earlier when you were talking about Marshall. But Eric Decker was the lone receiver that you guys were not able to identify that had 11 receiving, he actually had 12 receiving touchdowns to go with Brandon Marshall's 14. And so that brings us to the end of this round and the end of the round school break. This is a little bit of a stretch, but I wanted to squeeze this in for you guys. I want to talk about the Detroit situation. And so just this week, they signed Anquan Boldin. Tate is the incumbent. And I think, Jeremy, we talked about Golden Tate versus Marvin Jones last week. Marvin Jones comes in, and, this may actually be one situation where it may affect one of their backs in Theo Riddick. So I'll leave it open to you guys. I won't ask a specific question, but what do you guys make of this Detroit receiving situation with the addition of Anquan Boldin? Let's start with you, Jeremy.
I'm just going to go back to what I know, and that's Colts. And I got so excited about freaking Andre Johnson coming in the twilight of his career and how he's going to blow it up and they're going to score like 80 points a game. Dude, I'm sorry. I'm not going to get behind Anquan Boldin. I'm not going to budge on my love for Golden Tate. I think who it screws most is probably TJ Jones. I don't think it hurts Theo Riddick at all. I think it might hurt Ebron. I think it might be the biggest shot to Ebron because what does Anquan do? He runs that Reggie Wayne 5 yard in and runs crossers and stuff. So like that's what I would imagine Ebron would be doing. Not I don't know. So I would say it probably hurts TJ Jones or Ebron the most. I don't. But outside of that, like I don't really care. He's 40 and on a 1-year contract and didn't play well last year. So who cares?
Yeah. So Jeremy's keeping Marvin Jones and Golden Tate and Theo Riddick status quo. How about you, Eric? What's your take on the situation over there in Detroit?
Yeah, I agree with Jeremy. I love Anquan Boldin, man. Like, you know, as a Niners fan, I love what he did. I loved him when he was with the Cardinals and with the Ravens. And, you know, but he's just like Jeremy said with Andre Johnson, he's a name going to a new city, and people expecting, you know, early career Anquan's going to be disappointed. You know, Golden Tate, whenever he got the opportunity to play without Calvin in the lineup, he produced wide receiver 1 numbers in fantasy football. And over the last 8 weeks of last year, when Jim Bob Cooter took over the Lions offense, Matthew Stafford threw 19 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. So he was the most efficient he's ever been in his entire career. And, you know, it's kind of hard to, you know, be optimistic when you take one of the greatest wide receivers the game's ever seen in Calvin Johnson, remove him from that offense and say that, you know, that offense is in a fair position. But with Golden Tate and, you know, Eric Ebron actually, you know, progressing and, you know, they're trying to, you know, draw plays up and game plans for him. Q's just one of those guys, like outside of like best ball leagues, like maybe like the My Fantasy League 10s or, you know, something of that nature. Q's not really a guy that I want to have to count on every week, like figure out what weeks I wanted to actually put him in my lineup. It's still going to be Golden Tate. It's still going to be, you know, the up and down weeks of Marvin Jones where he has, you know, 1 catch for 15 yards and then the next week he has 7 catches for 3 touchdowns and 100 yards. It's, you know, that pecking order, you know, I agree with Jeremy again that, you know, Golden Tate's the guy you love, and there are other guys. It's, you know, is this the week that, you know, they get their piece of the pie?
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff, guys. I actually agree that I think Ebron might be hurt the most with you, Jeremy. And I think actually this may hurt Theo Riddick, who has been, you know, lining up in the slot. And, you know, Anquan can definitely eat over the middle and possibly take not as much away from Riddick than he does from Ebron. But I can see it slightly hurting Theo Riddick over there. But really good stuff. So that does bring us to the end of round 2. And Jamie, what is the score going into our speed round?
We have Eric at 8 and Jeremy at 7.
All right, so very close battle. The speed round is definitely going to decide it here. With Eric in the lead, we're going to ask Eric for you to please drop off, and we're going to run the speed round with Jeremy, and then we'll be pulling you back on in roughly 2 minutes. Once again, the speed round consists of 7 correct answers, and we'll give you 30 seconds to get all 7 of those. All right, Jeremy, this speed round, we're actually going to shift over to the special teams side. And what I want you to tell me is I swear I'm not messing with you, Jeremy, and the question is, did this player return a punt or kickoff for a touchdown in 2015? If this player returned a punt or a kickoff for a touchdown in 2015, you say yes. If the player did not return a punt or a kickoff for a touchdown in 2015.
Got 30 seconds queued up. All right. Ready to roll, Jeremy?
Let's do it.
And go.
Cordarrelle Patterson?
No.
David Johnson?
Yes.
Amir Abdullah?
Yes.
Tyler Lockett?
Yes.
Darren Sproles?
No.
Dree Archer?
Yes.
Jarvis Landry?
Yes.
You got 3 out of 7 right. David Johnson.
Okay.
Lockett.
Tyler Lockett. And
Yeah.
Jarvis Landry.
Those were the 3 that I wrote down too.
Okay, so yeah, going over it, for Cordarrelle Patterson, you said no, Jeremy. He was an actual yes, and he actually had 2 touchdowns on kickoffs. David Johnson, you said yes, and he did return a kickoff for a touchdown. Amir Abdullah, you said...
He said
yes.
He said
Yes.
yes, but he not.
Okay, sorry guys.
You didn't have a kick return?
No, so Amir Abdullah did not have a kickoff return or a punt return for a touchdown. No. And Tyler Lockett, yes. And Tyler Lockett does come in on both kickoff and punt returns. So that's an interesting fun fact. Darren Sproles had 2 punt returns for touchdown. Dree Archer did not. And Jarvis Landry, yes, you answered correctly. So, all right, I'm going to grab Eric.
All right, guys.
All right, welcome back, Eric. In the speed round, Jeremy was able to get 3 of those correct, so the score stands at 10-8.
Oh man, there's got to be a tough one then.
Yeah, this one is a little bit obscure, so that means that you can take this one home by successfully answering 3 of these questions. So, Eric, for this speed round, we have a special teams question.
Special teams?
Yes. So we had to pull in some special teams, and the question for you is whether or not the players that I name returned either a kickoff or a punt for a touchdown in 2015. You have to say yes or no.
Okay.
So if they returned a kickoff or a punt for a touchdown in 2015, you say yes. If you don't think this player returned either a punt or a kickoff for a touchdown in 2015, you'll say no.
All right. Let's take a shot in the dark.
All right, Jamie, let me know when you have 30 seconds on the clock, and if you can check with Eric, I'll be ready to go this time.
Okay, 30 seconds on the clock. Are you ready, Eric?
Yeah, let's take a shot at it.
Ready, Art?
Yep.
Okay, 30 seconds beginning now.
Cordarrelle Patterson?
No.
David Johnson?
Yes.
Amir Abdullah?
No.
Tyler Lockett?
Yes.
Darren Sproles?
Yes.
Dree Archer?
Yes.
Jarvis Landry?
Yes.
All right.
So, Eric, you said, let's run down this list really quickly. Cordarrelle Patterson, you said no, but he actually had 2 returns for touchdowns this year. So he actually made this list. You got that one incorrect. David Johnson.
Guess that he was active for 2 games.
Yeah,
Right.
Amazing. David Johnson, you identified correctly. He did return a kickoff for a touchdown. Amir Abdullah, you did not identify, or you actually identified, yes, that he did not have an official return. But as Jeremy just informed us, he had 2 called back. Is that right, Jeremy? Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, but the official answer there was no.
So Eric did get that one correct. Yeah.
Correct.
Yep. Tyler Lockett, you correctly identified with a yes, and Tyler Lockett showed up on the kickoff and the punt return for touchdown list. Darren Sproles showed up on the punt return list. You correctly identified him and he actually had 2 punt returns. Dree Archer, both of you guys missed. He did not have a return for a touchdown. And lastly, Jarvis Landry did return a punt for a touchdown, which you caught correct. Jamie, how many did Eric end up with?
5 correct answers.
So 5 correct answers in the speed round gives you a total of 13. That puts our final score at 13-10. Congratulations, Eric. You'll be moving on to the finals. Thank you guys very much.
I would dab, but I'm not a douchebag. So
Yeah, don't dab. So yeah, another really great episode. Before we go into closeouts, I do want to thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, Eric, for coming on. Had a blast and really enjoyed not only the competition, but the very good analyst insight that you guys provided. So let's start with you, Jeremy. Anything to say to the listeners or the crew or the guests here today before you go off?
I'm going to need like 30 minutes, probably 3 months to get over this. Like, I can't stand it. Now I got a worst enemy in Eric Ollinger. Eric, I'm not going to let you live this down. Like, I'm coming after everything you write from here on out. I'm going to join IDP leagues everywhere and just learn more about what you're great at and just try and tear you down from the inside. So just be forewarned. Like, I got you. I got you in my sights now. So I had a good time. Thanks for having me on. I mean it when I say that I hate losing, and this probably won't get over this for about 3 months. So, but yeah, it's been a pleasure. And Eric, you're an awesome dude. You better beat Seeley's. Yeah. Okay. next week, because I don't want to lose to the runner up. You know what I'm saying? Like, get
Right,
some.
right.
You got a number one fan and a worst enemy in me now. So
Yeah, Jeremy, thanks again, man. just been an awesome guest, awesome contestant. And actually, your little rant there reminded me to tell everybody out there that whether it's you, Jeremy, or anybody else that wants to get into our challenge series, we're looking to kick off a series where we will facilitate and pull together the questions. If you challenge one of your fellow analysts out there, we'll coordinate and have you guys on for a one-off fantasy face-off. All right, but that brings us to our winner, Eric. Any parting words for the listeners or the guests today?
Hey, Jeremy, man, it was a pleasure. I had a lot of fun doing this. Those questions weren't easy, man. Like, I was glad that it was close. Like, I'm glad that the speed round meant something. It was a lot of fun. But I'm looking forward to taking on Jake next week, and hopefully we'll be able to bring it home for DLF. And thanks for letting me come on and take a shot at this, man.
Yeah, thanks again, Eric. And once again, Eric has earned the right to advance to the final round where he'll be facing Jake Seeley. Look for that to drop sometime next week. But remember to follow Eric at Olinger IDP, and remember to follow Jeremy at DFF_Deuce. Before we officially close, any parting words for the listeners, Jamie?
I'll just want to say thanks to everyone that's participated in this, and you two guys were great competitors. Jeremy, very young man, 24 years old still, so Eric, we've all got a few years on you. Eric, you've been awesome. It's going to be a great final next week or whenever we get that down, but I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we've enjoyed having you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Really looking forward to the final. Remember to follow Jamie at FIPA_Black, and remember to follow me at Fantasy_IPA. Please remember to go to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe. That's going to do it for this semifinal match of the Fantasy Face-Off from Fantasy IPA. Until next time, make sure you get you some IPA.
Adios.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy IPA podcast. Visit us at fantasyipa.com and follow us on Twitter at fantasy_IPA.
Hail to the king, baby.
To the house, baby.
Please subscribe and review at iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast provider.
Call truck. That's called truck.
See you next time, and until then, make sure you get you some IPA.
Come get some.
Get some. Get some. Get some.
We just want to say thank you for all the love.
And we're out.